I think it's about time that we finally give up on the New York Mets. Yes, they're only 21 and 29. And yes, they are in a similar position to the 2022 Phillies, which would of course mean the Phillies choke away the division to the Braves and the Mets sneak into the wild card and make it to the World Series. That being said, there are reasons why I don't think that will happen. I think that the Mets could set themselves nicely for 2025, 2026, but 2024 I think is about time that we give up. Because for what seems like the 15th time this year, the Mets have had their worst loss of the season. What do I mean by that? I mean a loss the Mets really had no business losing. A game the Mets really had no business losing. The game against the Cubs where it was 1-0, where if Alonso had just slid into first base using his feet instead of his hands, the game would have been tied and the Mets might have won that game, thus winning the series against the Cubs instead of splitting. You have the game against the Braves where the Mets choked late. More importantly, the Mets had a 4-2 lead heading into the top of the ninth against the Phillies. Phillies tied up and then win the game in extra innings. Then you have the game against the Miami Marlins where after already getting shut out 8-0 in a complete embarrassment, the Mets have a 9-5 lead in the top of the ninth, in the middle of the ninth, and they somehow let the Marlins tied up at 9 before the Marlins win 10-9 in extra innings. Oh, and I forgot about the game against the Tampa Bay Rays too, where with no one on base and 2 outs, the Mets let up a solo home run to tie the game at 5 going into extra innings before losing 7-6. In the game against the Cleveland Guardians, the Mets built themselves nicely up to a 3-0 lead in the 6th and then lost 6-3, getting swept by the Guardians for the first time in history. And against the Giants, top of the 8th, Giants are leading 6-2 and then fall behind 8-6. Worse, with the game at 8-7 in the bottom of the 9th and with bases loaded, the Mets get out on a play where non-MLB players probably would have made first base to tie the game up. After there was a strikeout to the point where an out would have ended the game and denied any runs from being scored. Basically, the Mets are finding new and impressive ways to choke away games. They are losing in increasingly embarrassing fashion in games that they have no business losing to. The Mets should be at the very least a 500 team. But poor coaching is holding them back significantly. And Steve Cohen seems to not be interested in firing anyone. He's a pretty bad owner, if you ask me. I think he should sell the team. Now the Mets could still make a comeback on this season, but I don't think it would result in a playoff berth. But I think the worst part for the Mets is that this could wind up being their worst season since 2003. For how mediocre the Mets have been, since 2003 they only made the playoffs 4 times. In 2006, 2015, 2016, and 2022, the Mets don't seem to have really bad seasons. 2017 they went 70-92, and the last time they went worse than that was when they only had 65 wins in 2003, excluding 2020, which by the way 2020 was the only time since 2003 that the Mets finished dead last in the division. So the Mets could very well finish last. The Marlins are actually starting to wake up, and not only could the Mets finish, dead last in the division, the Mets could also have their win total in the 60s. After starting off 0-5, but then going 12-3, the Mets have since went 9-21 to put themselves in this position. and I see no signs of improvement. All I see is the Mets choking in increasingly embarrassing fashion in games that they have no business losing to, going from being only 1 game out of the wild card picture, now they're down to 4.5 games out of the wild card picture. Is the season still early? Yes, but I think that the loss to the Giants really shows the Mets have no idea what they're doing, no idea how to hold down a lead, and just aren't going to be able to do anything this season. Maybe when Alvarez comes back, we'll see some improvement, but the Mets are probably going to go so poorly without him that honestly Alvarez might not be able to even save the team. But hopefully if he comes back in 3 weeks, the Mets will have some signs of improvement.